Truth and Dialogue podcast. Once again, I'm your host, Toby Davis, and this episode is going to be about truth in politics in the 2020 election. Wow. Is that possible? Well, I don't know. We'll find out. I don't have a guest today, but that's okay. I'll do my best to offer counterpoints to my own points. I'll do my best also to keep phrasing this, most of what I talk about, as questions and not statements where I claim to know really anything about what I'm talking about. The idea here is to bring up ideas, to talk about them, and to try to rationalize our own thought around those ideas and maybe open one person's eyes to the idea, of seeking truth in themselves and seeking truth in important ideas and important topics like the election, like politics, like belief in God, like their family and what's going on with them, maybe what is causing suffering in their own lives and what the truth is behind that. Any of those things. If any of those are accomplished, even for one person, again, that serves the mission of the podcast. You can follow us on Facebook and on Twitter. And if you're watching on YouTube, please hit the subscribe button below. And if you could, click the notification bell as well. Get notified when we publish a new episode. Again, trying to do this weekly. I know I missed a week here, and I apologize for that. But the idea is to offer meaningful content as well and not to just do this as fast as possible. So like I said in the first episode, I'm going to be bad at this to start out. And to me, that's my attempt at, taking a leap of faith and, straying out of order into chaos a little bit and trying my hand at something new. And hopefully I'll get better at it. And it'll become more interesting as we go, and we'll offer even better content as we go, and maybe hopefully some guests as well. But first I want to go into Facebook a little bit and discuss a Facebook promotion that I put out a couple weeks ago. And the reason I want to do that is because the results were very surprising and very interesting. So the idea was to take one of the posts on Facebook, which is a simple little statement about the core mission of the podcast, of the show. And I'll read it here. And again, on YouTube, I'll post all of this on the page in the video. It says, to say it here officially, the Truth and Dialogue core mission is to seek and never claim to know truth through honest and civil dialogue. And then watch here. And there's a link to the first episode in YouTube. And so for $40, I boosted this, I think, for 3 or 4 days. And if you're not familiar with Facebook ads or promotions, you can take any post from a public page and you can set demographics you want to target for the promotion. So whose newsfeed will it appear in? And that can be certain states, certain cities, the entire country. And it can be male or female, and it can be people of a certain age, as far as I know. Oh, you can also add interests, like I added interests such as podcasts and truth and discussion. So this ad was, again, $40. It ran for just a few days, and I sent it out to the entire United States, and male or female, and I think it was between the ages of 25 and 55, something like that. The idea was to kind of test the waters and see, would we reach anybody? Would we get any clicks on the YouTube page? Would we grab anybody's attention, right? Which, if you really think about it, and if you ask the question, well, what is the purpose of any Facebook ad or Facebook promotion? You would probably come up with most of those ideas. I think fairly simply to engage new people with your Facebook page, get them to click a link, watch a video, buy a product. I think anybody if you're not familiar with Facebook, then I'd be surprised. But I think most of us are, right? We're familiar with Facebook and Facebook ads. You come across them all the time on your timeline. And, I think for most people, you scroll past them, honestly. So I didn't really expect a lot from this promotion, at least from an engagement standpoint. Again, there were just testing the water, see what we'd come up with. So to my surprise, there were 72 comments, 134 post reactions. So the likes, the happy faces, the hearts, all those. And 2 people did share the post, which is great. I mean, you got to think if you click the share button, then you wanted somebody else to see it or other folks to see it. So I appreciate that. And I really appreciate anybody who took the time to engage on the post. But I can say that some of the commenters, most of the commenters, I would ask the question out loud, what exactly was the purpose of your comment? Because, and we'll show some of these on the page, and you can certainly go to Facebook and see these for yourself. I can tell you most of the comments were people that seem to completely hate Facebook ads, and they consider those spam, and they consider them completely a waste of their time on their news feed. And, they're here to tell you about it and tell you all about what wrong you just did to them by having your ad, be placed in their timeline on Facebook. So think about that just for 1 minute. I won't spend a lot of time on this, but to see a Facebook ad as you're scrolling through, whether you're on your phone, on the app, or you're on your computer, and to take the time to be angry at the fact that there's an ad, but also then to click the comment section, locate some image or some meme or GIF. I know that's easy with GIFs on Facebook, but a lot of these are memes, the pictures with, there's one with a lion flipping the person looking at them off. A lot of weird things. So one of President Trump saying with a quote says, "More damn Facebook spam." So you had to take the time to find that photo, or maybe it was already loaded on your phone and the images in the gallery, and maybe it was quick to do. And maybe if you here's the question I would ask: if these folks took the time to do this on my post, again, who the hell am I? And, who cares about what I'm talking about? Nobody's watching this show. Nobody's on Facebook, right? And it wasn't even a post about, I wasn't even trying to sell a product. It wasn't, a video about a product, which I think is probably what I see most Facebook ads are. It was just a simple text post. And so to click on that link and grab an image that you maybe had, then I would ask the question, is that something people like this do with every Facebook ad they come across? I don't know. You have to wonder, right? Because again, if I would think that my post was fairly vanilla compared to, what I'm used to seeing on Facebook that draws the most hate, that draws the most, responses to other posts. Because there were arguments in these posts because somebody would post. So it wasn't all about the spam. There was one. So here's one that says, and let me get one that gets responses. Because again, there were people that you would click on the comments, find a comment they didn't like, and then not just post these pictures, these memes, but they would actually respond to other people's comments. And that's where you got to be also asking the question, like, why do you have enough time to go into posts like this and, start arguing with people that you don't know? And so I'm not seeing any that have the responses. So my apologies. So I'll just read one. It's a text response instead of any of the photos. So, because it's very random and very odd. One says, there is a difference between what you know and what you think. A few harsh realities too. Two of my favorites are, majority does not mean the same thing as being right. And AN, not AND. Numbers do not equal strength. It's something of a paradox that most people try to be popular and gather up a herd of like, quote, unquote, minded individuals. That's it. So I think that's an attempt to comment on the mission of the podcast, I think. But most of it was pictures. And so you got to think then, I started asking myself this kind of question again, having sort of a dialogue with myself here, but so do these people do this often and not just with my single post? Did they do this all day? Or, at the time they were on Facebook and posted something on my page or on my post, did they do that with all the other Facebook ads that they came across in the time that they were sitting there going through Facebook? And do they do that every time they're on Facebook and going through ads or going through the timeline and they're coming across ads? Because I don't know about you or me, but you can do this on Facebook and you'll see that just scrolling through for about a minute, you'll come across at least 4 ads. So 4 ads in a minute. And would you stop all 4 times to tell that person or that page, comment on that page, to show them how disgusted you are with the fact that they are trying to promote their page? Because a lot of this was basically centered around the idea that their timeline is not for sale and their timeline is for friends and family. And I want to ask all of them the question. It's like, do you not understand what Facebook is trying to do? Like if you were speaking to Mark Zuckerberg, the CEO, the founder, creator of Facebook, and he explained this idea of, why they're selling Facebook ads, would you be surprised? Would you act like you had no idea that was going on? Because I would imagine that conversation would go something like, we're allowing companies, whether they're large or small, to use our ad and promotion system to try to reach a broader audience, to target certain demographics from interests and from ages and genders and locations, to promote their page, to gather more interest in their product or service. And that's a revenue stream for Facebook. And that's then a potential new revenue stream for the company that's offering the promotion. And, as long as Facebook does that fairly, there's, where you might ask other questions, as long as that's fair, and they allow all companies to do that, as long as that Facebook promotion doesn't break any laws, is not immoral or unethical, or like I said, illegal, then everyone should have access to that that's on Facebook as a company. And as, somebody who is just a general user of Facebook, which probably most people are, and I am, I think by now you probably would have come to have understood that. And I guess I guess not. Maybe I'm the minority here. I don't know. I'd hate to say I'd like to know what you think. I do, but I hate to start another stream of vile Facebook comments. But I am curious if that's a thing that folks do, because consider the amount of time that's taken up doing that. And then I would have anyone who maybe is listening to this, ask yourself, if you're a person that participates in this kind of activity, have you ever stopped to do the math on that time? How much of your life that time takes up? Because you got to imagine there's some real anger, I would think, behind taking time to do that. So if that's true, and let's say you spend half an hour on Facebook, and so that's 30 minutes, right? And so what did I say? 4 ads for every minute you were on the Facebook. Let's make it 2 ads for every minute, right? So maybe you're stopping on friends' posts and things like that. Maybe you're not just constantly scrolling. So 2 ads for every minute you're there. So that's 15 total ads in 30 minutes, right? So in that 30 minutes, for the 15 total ads, did you stop on every single one of them to tell them how awful the idea of their Facebook ad was and how much you consider it spam and how you want it gone? So if you did, let's say it took a minute per post, per comment, right? Okay, 15 ads, 15 minutes. How many times a day were you on Facebook? So that day when you did that, how many times were you there? Or how many times a day do you on average, are you on Facebook? Let's say 2 times a day, right? Get up in the morning, you're checking, you're scrolling through. You come home at night, you're sitting on the couch and you're scrolling through again. So 2 times. 2 times a day, let's say half an hour each. Again, I would imagine I'm being conservative. 15 minutes each time you spent telling all the Facebook ads how bad they are. So that's 30 minutes a day. Okay. Spent in anger. Again, I'm asking the question kind of. Isn't that time spent in anger? Because you're taking the time to show that anger. So 30 minutes each day. I would think every day. I wouldn't think there's a break for weekends. So, let's knock out, I don't know, maybe 10 days of the year where you avoided Facebook. So 265 days times 30 minutes. That's 7,950 minutes. So divide that by 60. That's 132.5 hours a year spent in anger on Facebook over Facebook ads. Okay, so how many work weeks is that? 3.3. So 3 1/3 work weeks spent in a year just posting hate on Facebook ads. All right, that sounds pretty high, doesn't it? Can you imagine if that's true? So I would ask the question again, dialogue here, asking questions. Is that true? If you or someone you know is again, I've never heard of this. I've never really seen comments like this on a Facebook ad because I don't really click on Facebook ads, or at least not the comments. But if that's true, are you really? If you do the math, is it worse? Is it a little better? Maybe. Are you spending 3 1/3 work weeks a year of your precious, valuable time on this planet hating on ads on Facebook? Is that a valuable use of your time? What does that do to your psyche? Because you got to imagine if somebody's doing that what are they also the type? And I used to be like this. Okay. I'll admit to this absolutely 100%. I would go to the more polarizing posts on Facebook from news outlets, whether they're local or national. And, like I talked about in the first episode, I was in that kind of battle mode, right? So And I tried to be a little honest and follow like all the major national outlets, Fox News, CNN, MSNBC, or NBC, just NBC. And so, you'd see a post that you might consider divisive or polarizing. And like you'd say, all right, for fun, let's click on the comments. Let's see what's going on. Right. And occasionally I think I would find somebody I, just completely disagreed with and get, be one of the people that replied to them and tried to talk some sense into them, all the sense you can talk to somebody in, 200 characters or less. So you can imagine if there's folks that are spending this kind of time on Facebook ads, aren't they probably also in that kind of mode as well, where they're going to more polarizing and divisive posts from actual, public outlets or public figures and engaging in the comments there too? So is it more time then spent in hate on social media than just 3 work weeks per year? Is it 5 to 6 work weeks per year? Can you imagine that? I mean, how many of you get, more than 3 weeks vacation from your job each year? Think about that and think about how much more vacation time or time off you'd want from that job. Well, criminally, man, like, are you spending even more than that time you would want hating on Facebook ads and things like that? What could you be doing with that time that's maybe more valuable for you and your family? And if you're spending that much time in that kind of mode where, you're truly spreading hate, the hate you feel, then what does that do to your psyche when you are with your family? Your immediate family, your extended family, the community, your neighbors, the people you work with. And that's, again, the idea, the core mission of this podcast is to take you on my own journey to seek out truth and responsibility for myself, and to maybe help you start to think about taking responsibility for yourself. And that's not me here to say what that means for each of you. That's not the idea. You have to decide what that means for you. And maybe you've already been down that path. But maybe you haven't. And maybe, thinking about things in these ways, maybe asking these questions of yourself, you start to think of, am I taking responsibility for myself? And if you took responsibility for yourself and, kind of cleared a pathway forward for yourself that is more honest and more valuable and sets a goal, a real goal that's attainable, but would mean something for you, then again, same question in that regard. What would that do for you and your family, your immediate family, your extended family? What would that do for your impact, on the folks that you're not around all the time, like the people in your community, your church, your job, your neighbors, any of those groups, extended groups? And what if everyone did that? Can you imagine a world where everyone took self-responsibility in that manner and the impact it might have? It's one of those funny things you always talk about is, it's like you go back to like Miss America pageants. They ask the woman, what do you want? What do you want to fight for? What is your mission? Whatever that question is. And world peace. I want world peace. I want to seek world peace. And, we all kind of like snicker, right? You kind of snicker like, yeah, okay, good luck. Because it's a weird idea to think, well, what in the world, what the hell could one person do to achieve a better world in any way, shape, or form? Well, that might be the way. And I think that's, the word. I mean, a lot of what you're hearing that I talk about are based on some things I've listened to and things I've learned. So again, the world is, filled with suffering. Life is hard. And I think you really need to seek the truth in these types of manners, to be prepared to deal with that suffering. So that's the Facebook thing. And again, think about that. Ask those questions. And ask, I wouldn't recommend getting into the Facebook comments on ads a lot, but check those out. See if you see the same thing I'm talking about. A lot of this is spam. And I have 3 that say, I'll read it here. Again, this is not for children here, so change the channel, kids. I don't think any kids are listening to this, but it says, fuck off. My news feed is reserved for friends and family. It is not an advertising platform that will earn you my patronage. And there's no audio to that. There's no, you don't get the visual of a person saying it, but that's kind of how you say it in your head, right? Because it is such sort of a vile and angry comment. So there you go on that. So what else? Just the last thing on the Facebook comments. And again, this is kind of what I was talking about earlier. Find the truth in yourself by taking responsibility for yourself. I'm trying to do that on this journey. I'm trying to take you along that journey. It doesn't matter who I am. It matters what I do along the way. So let's talk a little bit about politics and the 2020 election as well. Because I think you can still see some of that. I mean, you can see a lot of it, the divisiveness of the 2016 election, and it's about to rear its complete ugly head for the 2020 election as well. And so how in the world do you make sense of it? How do you seek any kind of truth or find any kind of truth? And that's not a simple question. You might think, well, what do you mean truth? It's a good question. It's not a simple one. And I mean, it could mean truth in what each candidate stands for, truth in what the media tells you about each candidate. It could be truth in the money flowing to the candidates and where does that come from and what impact does that have on their decision-making process? Do you really know what each of them believes in? And does that align with your beliefs? What are your beliefs? That might be the bigger question. Where do you stand on some of these issues? And then maybe another truth to seek in all of this is, how important is the presidential election to each American's everyday life? And so I think that's a question maybe first worth discussing. And, again, not ever claiming to know the truth, but seeking the truth behind it. Well, you might ask, or you might say, well, the presidential election affects the federal government. So then, that's, of course, one of the 3 branches of the federal government. That's the executive branch. And the federal government is set up so that there is a balance of powers, or there's supposed to be, between, the president, Congress, and the Supreme Court. So what impact does that have to my everyday life as an American? I don't know. Those affect that system of government affects how you're taxed and your federal taxes. it affects then how, of course, businesses are taxed, which also has effect on you. And, you know, your ability to retain your job or get a new job. I don't know. There's more to that, of course. But does that have more of an impact than the elections for your state government, your governor, your state representatives, your city or town government? You know, those representatives, the town and city councils, mayors. Do those have more of an effect on your everyday life? Well, I'm not posing that question to in any way suggest that it's not important to pay attention to the presidential election and to not care and to even not vote. That's not what I'm saying there. I think it's a little bit possibly to do with the perceived power that we place in the hands of the president and the three branches of the federal government. You know, if you're somebody that looks to those individuals, to those groups as the ones who make everything work and who can fix everything or can break everything. And when I say everything, I mean, do you perceive them as, you know, the groups that can cause harm to your life and the lives of the family and friends around you in your, you know, immediate surrounding area, in your state? I think that's a question worth investigating. And another idea, I think another thing to talk about in all this is the electoral college. I think we're going to hear about that a lot more, I think. And I've had these discussions privately as well. And I've had folks bring up the idea of, you know, the electoral college is worthless and we should just rely on the popular vote. And again, there's discussions that need to be had there. And again, it's not so any of us can then say, well, we've decided it's good or it's bad, and we should leave it in or take it out. I think it helps that we all understand. So let's have that dialogue and understand, well, so what is the exact purpose of the Truth in Dialogue? I'm sorry, not the Truth in Dialogue, but the Electoral College. And, or at least what was the supposed intended purpose when it was created? And I've always been kind of the belief that the purpose was to install balance within the election so that if the population ended up concentrated in certain pockets of the country, which it is, I mean, that's not something you can really argue with. The U.S. population is around 327 million people. That's a fact I pulled off of just a Google search, right? And that's as of 2018, according to the U.S. Census and the World Bank. I'll post a link to that. But again, just Google that. California, for instance, makes up 40 million of that population. And, you know, you can obviously check most facts and figures regarding recent elections. California is mostly votes Democrat. And so if in the electoral college system, if that weren't the case, could you then have, if you didn't have the electoral college, could you then have heavily dense pockets of the country deciding the presidential election? Maybe. And the electoral college then is supposed to be more fair, you know, compared to that, because it can take basically the vote from each state, right? So if South Dakota, with its 882,000 people, if they vote Republican or Democrat, however they vote, then their electoral college voters vote that way. And then they have an equal representation of electoral college votes within that entire system, right? And it's 270 to win the presidency. So that's a discussion worth having. And is it better to have the popular vote win, regardless of how dense the population is around the country and where the most dense, how the most densely populated areas voted? Or is it better to have, or to strive at least for this electoral college system that's supposed to be more balanced for the entire country? I imagine I would ask the question to California, and I wonder if California might say, well, it's not our fault that we have 40 million people versus South Dakota has 880,000. And South Dakota might say the same thing in reverse. It's not our fault that we only have 880,000 versus your 40 million. We shouldn't get a less than fair say. So that's a good point of discussion. And it's going to help you understand, if you talk about that with your spouse, look up the facts and figures. Don't just take clips or, headlines and make a decision. And don't, for God's sakes, don't make any of these decisions for yourself, because you belong to a group and your group says this is the way it should be. Don't do that. Do the research. Find out for yourself. Discuss it with your friends. Discuss this with your spouse, your loved ones. Right? Because maybe you already disagree. Great. That's fantastic. Have civil, honest dialogue with each other. And listen to one another. Again, listen to the other person as though they know what they're talking about. Because they just might. And they might have a point you haven't thought of. They might have information you haven't heard. They might help you rationalize your argument against them. Right? If you listen carefully to somebody's argument for something, then doesn't that help you also identify the holes in that point to then make the counter argument even stronger? So have those discussions. And, here's one of the things that I would also discuss and have dialogue around, rather than making just not gut decisions, but making rash decisions based on, headlines or what's trending today, or what's, the hashtag movement of the day, those sort of things. I don't think any of those have any place in finding and seeking truth in any matters. But think about this idea that a lot of times Democrat candidates prey on your group identity and your ideology. And a lot of times they like to group you into, or put you into your group, whether that's by race, by gender, by sexuality, or anything else. And watch out for the creation of this group of victims, because if I can place you, think about this. And again, let me try to rephrase that. I'm maybe straying off the path of asking questions and having truthful dialogue. So if I can place you in a group, and let's say you are all gay people, and I can tell you, all you gay people, right? If you're in this group, if I can place you in that group and I can identify you that way, and I can stop worrying about any of you as individuals and any of your journeys and any of your stories and your path and where you are in life and how you've experienced life and what things mean to you. If I can do that, and then I can tell you, I'm going to fight for you because you're a victim and it's terrible what's happened to you as the victim. And don't worry, vote for me and I will fight for you and make things better for you because you're a victim. If I can do that as a candidate, does that silence the identity of the individuals? Does that do anything for those individuals? And look back at any candidates who have ever portrayed any groups in that manner and look at what, if they got elected because of that, look at the results behind that. And again, kind of wondering out loud, did any of them ever actually do anything for those groups? Because, you know, we hear still to this day, it's 2020, right? And we still to this day, how many groups are still victims of, you name it, right? Whether it's an abuse of power, it's the tyranny in the hierarchy, or the patriarchy. It's, you know, men that are, have created a victim group out of all women, or it's, this race that have created a victimhood out of this other race, whatever it is. So look at the candidates in the past who have ever claimed that this group is a victim and you're part of this group, and ask yourself, what did that person do for that group? You know, just came to mind, you know, somebody to look into and look at her story. It's very interesting. And you can watch her podcast with Joe Rogan. Candace Owens. Candace Owens is a black woman, and she goes through how she was basically a far-leaning left liberal, and some things happened to her that got her really kind of opening her mind and kind of really just kind of seeking, I would say, seeking truth, you know, and she was exploring not what she had been told about how she should behave based on her group of being a black person. She started to think and rationalize her thoughts and opinions based on how she really felt about things and how the world was actually around her. And this is in no way, you know, a plug for changing your group, your political faction from liberal Democrat to conservative Republican. That's not the idea here. Behind any of this, again, think for yourself. Don't be a Democrat. Don't be a Republican. Be you. Make your decisions based on what you believe. Don't support Republicans and Donald Trump because that's your team and it's always been your team and it's always going to be your team. Being on that team is fine as long as that team aligns with what you believe in. And so that's what I think I'll leave you with here. That's the truth to seek, I think. What do you believe in politics? You know, think about all the major issues, but also think about how the federal elections and the federal system of government really impacts your everyday life. And then are you maybe not paying enough attention to city, county, local governments, state governments? Do those impact your life even more? A really hot button topic in the state of Indiana right now that we might want to discuss on a future episode, especially as the governor election comes up this year, is education. And, I think I have to do more research and hopefully get a guest on, but, you might say that the Republican conservative side with current Governor Holcomb is more about maintaining a surplus and supporting charter schools, I believe. And I think there's a belief there that they have skin in the game on the charter schools, and some folks that have maybe, and again, I'm just talking what I believe I've heard. I don't know enough about this, but I think I've heard that there's the idea that charter schools, which are, I believe, basically schools that are for-profit, which if it's for-profit, then somebody's, there are individuals that are reaping the rewards of that profit. So potentially for the Republican side, some of the folks that reap the rewards of charter schools are the ones that support the Republican side. And then on the Democrat side, you might say that, again, a more supportive group of labor unions, teacher unions, according to their messages so far. I think you see, the idea that we need to increase teacher pay and the funding going to public schools versus charter schools to keep up with surrounding states and with the country overall in total education spending. And the general message that Indiana has gotten very far behind in spending for public education and for teachers. So again, explore those ideas, talk about them with your friends and family, talk about them with your spouse. If you have a disagreement, fine. Of course, look up facts and figures and what's really going on. See what people actually say. Find long-form discussions like this where you can rely on, I think if you find somebody talking longer about something, it hides their ability. The longer they talk, the more their ability to say something dishonest is hidden. And I think that's where the value in long-form discussions is. And the idea behind truth in dialogue, or one of the ideas, is that if we're just having a conversation and trying to be honest about it and not screaming at one another, then there might be an equal exchange of information, thoughts, and ideas, and we might learn something. So I'll leave you with that. Again, follow us on Facebook and Twitter if you would. And you can find us both of those. Just search Truth in Dialogue. On Twitter, it's truth_dialogue. And if you're watching on YouTube, thank you very much. Hit the subscribe button and the notification bell if you would. And if you want, send us comments, and I'll give you the email for the show as well. It's truthindialogue@gmail.com. Send us ideas for guests and for topics. Tell us if you enjoy the show. Tell us if you think the show could be better and how it could be. Maybe without my ugly mug on the show, it could be a lot better. Again, you don't know me. It's not about me. It's about the discussions and the topics and seeking the truth. So for those of you watching and listening, thank you. Have a great week, and I hope to talk to you in about another week. Okay? See ya.